2020 was an absolutely crazy year. Let's hope that 2021 brings us all a lot more joy and that we continue to be as safe as possible in these troubled times. But it wasn't all bad in 2020, as there were some awesome games released. So I'm Super Beanie Man, and this is my top 10 games of 2020. So straight off the bat we have Dragon Ball Z Kakarot on PS4, which was the second Dragon Ball Z game that I brought after Fighters. I never played the Budokai games, so this was like my first real chance to relive the classic series in video game form, and I had an absolute blast playing this. It was really fun going back through all of the sagas, and even seeing the Buu saga, because I never actually watched that. I kind of got bored of Dragon Ball, and Buu himself it didn't really click with me, that design, so it's kind of put me off the show, so I never actually saw how this series ended. So this was a great way to sort of experience it firsthand and see how it all unfolded. And I gotta say, it was a pretty fun game, to be fair. It was a bit grindy towards the end, especially with some of the trophies that we had to get in order to get the platinum, but overall it was a really fun game. The fights were kind of fast and frantic, and it kind of felt like the show in a way. I think they did a really good job with that. But after a while, you kind of see everything there is to see with it, kind of thing. So the fights are like kind of the same. You sort of get into your own sort of routine of what you're going to do with every sort of fight. And it's only really some of the bigger bosses, like maybe the Vegeta fight, the Frieza fight, the Cell fights, where you're kind of forced to do something a little bit different because maybe they have certain different attacks and stuff like that. But for the most part, the generic enemies that you're going to fight, all the androids and that you end up destroying, and the Red Ribbon Army people that you take out, you can kind of beat them all the same way. So it did kind of get a bit stale towards the end, but overall it was a fun title to start the year off, and I really did enjoy it, to be fair, and that's why it's my number 10 choice. So in at number 9 is Shakedown Hawaii, the PS5 version, as this one actually come with a platinum trophy and some more additional trophies. So this was one that I just brought on the off chance, really, because I had a PSN voucher, so I just got it off the store for free, basically, because someone gave me a voucher, and I'm really glad I brought it because it's actually really fun. It plays sort of like the old PS1 GTAs with that top-down 2D bird's eye view perspective, but shooting is a lot easier in this thanks to some generous twin stick sort of shooting, and this one's more about building up your empire of property to kind of just buy up everything on the island. So you just take over various different businesses, and you come up with various schemes to cut costs and make more money as possible. There's like 3 playable characters. You play as the old man, his son, who's like a punk wannabe gangster rapper, and then there's this like hitman who will go on these various missions, and he does all the shooting mainly. But it's a really fun game. It's relatively easy to get the platinum trophy as well. You haven't really got to do anything too hard, and it can also be very funny at times, so it's well worth checking out if you've got some store credit. In at number 8 we have the PlayStation 5 exclusive Demon's Souls remake. Now, this was the first time I'd ever played Demon's Souls, and my god, it absolutely kicked my ass, and I went through all of the emotions playing this game, and it was one that really, really stressed me out, especially because I was going for the Platinum Trophy. It was an absolute nightmare at times, and I absolutely hated this game for quite a fair bit of it. You know, I'd be loving it at one point, then I'd get to a really bullshit bit and kept on dying over and over and having to go back, and I really hated it. Or I'd get to an awkward boss that just felt really cheap because he was like one hit killing me, and the emotions of anger and joy, and it was all there. You know, you get stuck on a boss, but then you finally beat him, and that sense of like, just, yeah man, fuck you, as you kill him and you get his demon soul. It's great, it's fantastic, but if you're gonna buy it, you've got to be prepared to like work hard for this game, because it won't hold your hand at all. You can die and you reset to the very start of the stage, and you've got to do everything again, and that can really take its toll. You know, a level that takes maybe 20-30 minutes can end up taking 2-3 hours if you keep dying and having to replay it over and over, so it can get frustrating. And like I said, the platinum was really stressful for me, but I had a blast, and I actually do want to go back and play it. So yeah, it's a good game. If it was a little bit easier, it probably would have been a bit higher, but as it stands, it's still well worth your time and definitely a highlight of the PlayStation 5 exclusives. So in at number 7, we have Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, I played the PS5 version of this. It was one of the 2 launch titles I got along with Satboy, and this one was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's basically Marvel Spider-Man, but with Miles this time, and if you liked that first game with Peter Parker, you'll like this one. This one's more of a sort of a trimmed down version. Basically, it's not quite a 30-40 hour game. It's more of like a 10 hour or so. It's like a brief sort of little mini series, if you will, but it's really fun. I didn't think the story was as strong, and I felt it suffered from some weak villains. The Troy Baker businessman villain, he wasn't very good, and I thought the Tinkerer was a bit weak, and it was kind of cliched that it was his friend, and I didn't really feel like that was as great of an emotional connection as Peter and Otto had in the first game, and I felt like the ending was a bit weak for that. For me, the best one was Rhino. I thought they did a really good job with him, and he kept reappearing throughout the game. I thought the Prowler was a bit of a waste as well, but he's always been a rubbish villain in my opinion. But yeah, and Peter Parker wasn't in it enough for me. That first opening bit when they're both sort of there together fighting Rhino was absolutely fantastic. But I think with this one, all of Miles' extra powers, like the sort of Iron Fist electric arm thing that he has, just makes him way too overpowered, and this game was just even easier than the first one. And the first one was pretty easy because you had all the gadgets, whereas Miles only has a handful this time. He doesn't have as many as Pete has because he has these extra powers like the invisibility and this sort of electric fist, but he's just like a god by the end of it, and you can kill everything. And because it's quite short, that's why it's kind of not as high as it could have been. But overall, it is a fun experience. So next up, for the number 6 spot, we have another remake of sorts in the form of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, or Resident Evil 3 as they just wanted to call this one. So this follows on the footsteps of last year's, or rather 2019 now, Resident Evil 2 remake. And this one, on one hand, I was really disappointed with it because of how it trimmed everything down really shortly. Like, it got rid of like I'm sure there was like a garden bit where you go in like a park or something, and there was like the petrol station bit where you have to get into it, and then the Nemesis comes and attacks you, and then the church bit, they were all sort of cut down. You just sort of briefly see them and then it just skims by them really quickly. And I also didn't like how they changed who went to the police station. So in this version, Carlos goes instead of Jill, so you miss out on the Nemesis being there. So you never see the Nemesis destroy part of the police station chasing Jill through it. And I felt like those were some of the best bits of the game, and they cut them out. It was kind of frustrating because the first bit of this remake, when you're in the streets and the Nemesis is just relentlessly chasing you, is absolutely fantastic. But as soon as you get to like the bridge bit where the Nemesis sort of transforms and he's no longer got legs and like a human form, he kind of loses that scariness because he's no longer chasing you anymore, and it kind of just becomes like a boss fight character and not really a threat that's always there hounding you. But just like Resident Evil 2, it still felt really good to play. The controls were great, the graphics looked really good, sort of the same as the other one. I really liked the Jill voice actress and the character model, but I thought she looked great. Carlos was done really well in this one as well, I thought. But I think they kind of wasted the villains in this. Nikolai didn't really appear much, he didn't really do anything, and then he sort of just gets killed at the end, and I thought that was a bit of a waste. They could have expanded upon the story, but they kind of just... It was kind of like the game was on fast forward, and it was just zapping through everything at lightning speeds, which was a shame. But it was still a fantastic game, and I replayed it again and again, and got the platinum and unlocked all the weapons and had the infinite rocket launcher and had a blast going through it with that. And yeah, it's really cool. Though I will point out the final boss was bullshit, especially on the harder difficulties. That was a right pain to try and get that. What was it, the nightmare mode or something, where I think it was like one death or something, was it? I can't remember, but yeah, that was a pain. But it was still a fun game, but just not as good as Resident Evil 2. So now we're at the halfway point of this list, and then at number 5 is Immortals Phoenix Rising for the PS5, also available on the PS4 I believe. So this one is kind of Ubisoft's version of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which was a game that I've never played, so maybe that's why I've enjoyed this one more than maybe the average person might if they played that title, but I thought this was absolutely fantastic. The world and traversing the world was just absolutely fantastic. It was really fun to just run around, fight enemies, climbing up rocks, cliffs edges, and then using your Icarus wings to fly around the environment. It was fantastic, and it was a really cool world to explore, and just seeing all the islands, and when you're standing on top of like a big mountain or something and just looking out and looking at the view around you, just knowing that you can go to that little building over there in the distance. It was just really, really cool and really fun. I liked the setting as well, the Greek mythology with it, though I did find the story was a bit shit at the start. There's about 2 hours for like the opening titles to come up, and I thought they were just really weak, but if you can suffer through that part of the game, it does get a lot better as you go through it, I felt. Though there were a few annoying little niggles that I felt this game suffered from, mainly due to the sort of Ubisoft sort of bloatedness of their games. They just seem to do everything in this game in excess. Like, you'll get to a puzzle, but there'll be another puzzle to do before you can access that puzzle that you came to do. Or maybe you'll go down into these vaults, into like this puzzle area, and you'll do a big puzzle in this one room to get into the next room, where you do that same puzzle again but with a slight variation, and after a while doing those, it really did bog it down, and it just felt like, come on game, just let me get on with it. Stop trying to pad out a 5-minute mission to make it 20 or 30 minutes instead, just so you can have the 60-hour playtime on the back of the box, you know what I mean? That's what kind of killed it for me. But it is a really fun game, and I'm definitely looking forward to a sequel. Let's just hope they make one, because Immortals is actually a good game. So in at number 4 is Astros Playroom for the PlayStation 5, which was bundled in with every console. So this was a free game, and the fact that it's number 4 on my list is just amazing because it was free and it's actually good for a change. So this one is pretty much a love letter to PlayStation fans, new and old, and for me it was just the perfect game to start the PS5 on, because it reminded me of how far we've come, and it was really nice to see all of the PlayStation references, from the DualShock controllers to the Buzz controllers, the consoles that you unlock, the little pocket station, all sorts of that sort of thing. The demo one, hearing the boot up sounds again, all that sort of stuff, and even seeing some really old characters we haven't seen for a while, like Jumping Flash from the PS1 days. It was just really cool to see, and part of the fun was just exploring the environments and just seeing like all the little references, because you'd often see various different Astrobot people dressed up as other PlayStation game characters. So there was one where it was like Jill and Chris by this like random wooden door for Resident Evil. I found Joel and Eddie. There was Kratos and the boy in a boat at the start of the game. There was Dante shooting a robot in the air from Devil May Cry. There was just so many to mention, but that's part of the fun, just in covering all of them. Sure, the actual game was quite short. There was only 4 worlds with sort of 4 levels in each, but it was just really fun to play, and the fact that it was free just made it even more sweeter. And I definitely hope that they do a full-priced, full game next, because the VR one was fantastic, and so was this, so we need a third brilliant game from the Astrobot people. So in at number 3 is Satboy, A Big Adventure for PS5. So this was the second game I got at launch, and I didn't play this until I'd finished Spider-Man Miles Morales, because I wasn't sure whether I would enjoy it that much, but this was really fun. I enjoyed it more than Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man was a fun game, but this one, I really liked it. There was just so many cool things to like and smile about when you play this game. From the special musical themed levels where you would hear an actual song from the past. There was like Britney Spears' Toxic. There was a David Bowie song in there. There was Junior Senior, Don't Stop the Beat. Everybody, that one. And then there was Uptown Funk, and the levels actually played out into that beat, so enemies and traps would trigger with the beat of the song, and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. And then there's just the normal levels as well that were really just fun to play, and I was a bit worried going into it that it was a co-op game built around co-op, so it wouldn't be as good on my own, but playing it solo I still had an absolute blast, because the main levels you can do solo. There's like a few co-op exclusive side mission levels that you can do, but I didn't really feel like I was missing out too much because there were so many levels in this game, and it's a really good package. There was a few glitches that happened when I was playing. I got to world 2, having completed all of what I could do in the first world and then most of the second world, and then it crashed and deleted my save file because it corrupted it, so I had to start the game again, but even that didn't put me off having to replay the opening like 4 hours again, because it was just so much fun to do, and I actually got better at the game for it. Overall the game is quite easy, but there's some really cool knitted night challenges, which are like these assault courses that you have to try and get through, and some of them are just really fun to try and just beat. And then the last one is like a culmination of every single one stacked together in a row, which was really tough, but it was fun to go through. And it's even better in co-op now that they've finally done the online update, so definitely check this out when you get a PS5 because it is really cool. So in at number 2, and just missing out on the top spot, is Ghost of Tsushima on the PS4. Now this game was absolutely fantastic. This game came out after The Last of Us 2, which everyone thought was going to be the best game of the year, but for me this was even better than The Last of Us 2, to be honest. This game was just put the fun back into video games after a kind of a depressing Last of Us 2, to be honest. So in terms of like story wise and just gameplay wise, it was just fun going through this. I loved the Tenchu series back in the PS1 and 2 days, so having a sort of an almost ninja sort of game, because you can go into like this ghost form and you can do dishonourable kills by stabbing people in the back instead of facing them head on like an honourable samurai would. So it kind of did feel a bit Tenchu in that respect, especially once you got like a grappling hook and you could swing around on rooftops and stuff like that. So it was really cool for that factor alone for me. But what I had to play through was an absolutely great game from start to finish. It was just fantastic. Even side missions were just really well done in terms of like the story and what you were doing. There was only like a handful, maybe 1 or 2 that I felt were a bit boring with this old woman, but on the whole, everything I did in this game was fantastic, and it was such a huge world to explore, and it was absolutely beautiful as well. The art direction in this game was fantastic. Going through fields with these like brightly coloured red flowers, or getting into a white snowy area, it just always looked brilliant. And it was shocking to think that it was on PS4. And even though it didn't look as good as like Last of Us 2, this one was a much more open world game, and yet it still looked fantastic. And it was just so cool. The combat was great. The various different stances you could have in terms of like I think it was like 4 stances, and they were what you did to take out certain enemies. So maybe like a big shield one, the one stance wouldn't be very effective for it, so you had to go to like a heavy stance so you could batter the shield, and it was just felt really good. The combat was just brilliant. The standoffs that you could do, like where it would be like a quick draw, who could draw the sword first to take the first swipe, they were really cool. There was just so many fun things in the game. It was just really, really well done. You can tell they spent a lot of time researching this sort of period and movies from this period and everything like that, because it does feel like a love letter to that sort of era, and it's just fantastic. It's just so much fun to play, and if they do like a PS5 super version of it, I'll probably will play it again because I had that much fun with it. But that's not quite my number 1 game. So what is it? Well, my number 1 game of 2020 is Streets of Rage 4 on the PS4. Now, I'll just say this. Streets of Rage 2 on the Mega Drive was one of my favourite games of all time, and when Streets of Rage 3 came out, it was really disappointing that it wasn't quite as good as number 2. In fact, there was a big gap between the quality of 2 and 3, to be honest, especially in terms of like the music. So when that game came out, I always wanted a 4th game, and we just weirdly never got it. Sega never bothered to do one. There was always rumours that they were making one, and it never really came to fruition. The closest we sort of got was Fighting Force on the PS1. That was almost Streets of Rage 4 at one point, and it kind of did. It was pretty much a 3D version of Streets of Rage, but we never got an official game. And this was just a brilliant franchise. And on the PS2, once Sega stopped making games, they were doing like Shinobi and a load of old ones like Golden Axe, but they never did Streets of Rage 4, and I was always annoyed. And then finally this year, well last year now, we got Streets of Rage 4, and it is absolutely fantastic. It's I will say it's not as good as 2, but 2 has a special place in my heart for the time when I played it when I was little. But this one it's right up there, it's right next to it, just slightly below, one step below it I think. But it's just a fantastic game, and the fact that you can unlock all the characters from every single Streets of Rage and use their sprite versions of the characters, and it still plays like those older games, and it still works within this new engine. It's just fantastic. The music is good. It's not as good as number 2's, but I still found myself humming it, and I've played this over and over again after beating it, and even after platinuming it, I still went back and played it, and I'm still playing it now. And I think that's a sign of a great game, when you still go back and you play it again and again, even though you've already played it. And I got the S ranks on hard. I completed arcade mode with, on hard difficulty. I did it again without dying once. It's just a fantastic game, and that is why it's my number 1 pick for the best game of 2020. Let me know what yours is in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.